Great.
So next up is Blake Harris.
Socks made on 88. And Blake and Bonnie are one of the reasons that we have a crank-in at our farm. Is they sent out a message on, I think it was on Ravelry, saying anybody on the East Coast want to host a crank-in, and this is almost 10 years, 11, would have been 10 years ago. So that's where we ended up going, and we got to know them. They come down from Nova Scotia, and they've started a retirement business. Blake used to work for the railroad, and he'll tell you more about that. You up, Blake? You ready?
Yeah, we're hopefully the speakers and everything works.
Can you turn up your volume a little bit?
It's up all the way.
There we go.
Hello.
Fun.
Well, we may have technical difficulties unless you can hear me.
Oh, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, when we retired, well, first off, I'm Blake, and on my right is Bonnie, and we started Socks Made on 88 because we needed to occupy all kinds of free time that developed with retirement. When I retired and got into this sock business, I had a big desire for wool socks. And the hand knitters I had making socks for me passed on, so the job turned out to be mine. One day I saw an ad from the Erlbacher Gearhart family or business about a sock machine, so I bought it. And 6 weeks later, I had to teach myself how to use it. Now, everyone who has gone through the process of learning it understands the difficulties that you face. So after learning it, or thinking I did, we decided that we were going to reach out and find some sources for more information, and that led us to meeting Jim and Amy and the development of the crank-in at their farm. We have, in the past 9 years, developed friendships with numerous people all over North America, and even some that have stretched out to other parts of the world. Now, to talk a little bit about the business itself, I have looked at other people's methods of demonstrating their sales, or like on a flat table, putting wrappers on their socks. We pivoted away from those for some reasons that came evident from our public sales, where people wanted to feel and touch everything. So paper wrappers disintegrated. So we went to a tag, something like this, with a string on it attached to the sock. The string was color coded because we knit our socks to your foot size, from a size 5 woman's to a men's 13. So to make it to control how many we have, we needed to have a color code system. I have a display set up, which I will show you in a few minutes, of our market stand in which we market our socks. I found that when you go into a market lying on a table, no one saw you. So we went horizontal. And what I have been told from managers of markets is that as soon as you walk in the door, you can see our display, and it attracts customers instantly. So I'm going to just take a minute here and pan the camera around and talk about the display. Mind you, if you're watching Bonnie, she's here Kitchener because that is her department, kitchering as well as sales. I don't know how to kitchen her. She won't teach me. So, sorry for the
We lost your sound, Blake.
you lost my sound.
There you
Yeah,
go.
very good. Okay.
I'm back. Okay. I'm going to try this. I don't know how well because I just got a little tiny screen to see. As you can see, it's a drying rack, if you can see it, and I have the socks hanging on clothespins that are secured in the drying rack. It's like a colorful flag in a market. Everyone gets to see them. The socks are organized to the shoe size, which makes giving gifts easier. Up on the top, I have hats. The hats are reversible. The outside is bright and colorful. The inside, it's a little dull. So one hat equals two hats. And we use that basically to use up leftover material. There's a normal hat and there's a ponytail hat. Ponytail hat is not reversible because it's the way it's built. There are, as you can see, between the two hats, a little big set of baby hats. And I had to get creative in using the waste yarn or not the waste yarn, but the surplus material after you knit socks. And one thing that I did do was started making, and if I can find it here, this little guys. I call them my smile collectors. We give them away. We'll have 2 or 3 on our display, and if someone expresses an interest in them, then we'll give them to them to collect a smile. Or when there's children in the market and they have expressed an interest to the little doll, they can have them. Originally, I was going to knit them and give them to the fire department and the EMF or the ambulance services because I thought it would be nice to have in an accident to give away. However, I quickly found out that making socks occupied too much of my time. Well, we've been doing this for 9 years, thereabouts, and Bonnie told me this morning that I had produced approximately 3,400 pairs of socks. So that would mean she has kitchenered 6,800 pairs of socks, and we're still plodding along having fun. And that was one of our goals, was to try to have fun in retirement and occupy our time. So I'm going to return back to the stand here.
Hey, Blake, before you put your camera all back, show your seat for your machine and everything.
My seat for the machine. It's just, you're talking this? It's just a
No, I meant
saddle chair?
your whole box setup.
Oh, the box. Sorry for the jigginess, but
We're getting seasick.
Yeah, I figured you would be by now. I have the yellow box carries all the yarn and everything that I need to take to a market. And then there's the crate above that for the sock machine itself. And those two stack up on each other, and that is my seat when I'm at a market. I throw a sheepskin over top it and a gel pad underneath it to give myself a little bit of comfort. Now, while I'm pointing out things, everyone has had many conversations, or I followed many conversations on feeding your machine yarn. Well, the way I feed my machine yarn is this. It's a paint roller. And what I do, instead of using a toilet paper roll, I use a paint roller where I take the foam off and just use the plastic core as a means to hold my yarn. It is wound up on this type of a winder, and the winder permits me to slip the plastic cylinder over it after it's knit, and I just slide the wool ball onto it and then put it on a paper or on a paint roller. It's a lot better than paying hundreds of dollars for a fancy electric machine when a paint roller only costs a couple bucks. And it has worked very well for the 8 to 9 years that we have used it.
You want me to ask you some questions? People are asking some questions, Blake. Should I yell them out?
Yes.
Where's the name
Let
come
her
from?
fly, Amy.
Okay. Well, the one question Jim just asked, what does 88 stand for?
Well, 88. Our machine is the 88th machine that the Erlbachers made. And when we were registering our name, because we wanted to register as a business when we went into a farmer's market, they didn't accept our names, and they gave us a listing of requirements that we had to follow. So one thing was we had to have a description of what we were selling. So socks is what we're selling. And how it was made was another thing. So it was made on, and we put 88 as the 88th machine off the badge number. So that's how our name was developed. And my camera's a little sideways, so I hope this is not looking too downhill.
Oh, you're fine.
There
You're
was
good.
just another question that was asked. Did you knit all the socks on one machine? And Blake is the only person I know that only owns one machine.
Yes, I own one machine. I had kicked the idea around numerous times of having a second machine for the purposes of demonstrating at a market. Whenever we go to the market and go to a museum, we are there to demonstrate the sock machine, and I've always thought it'd be nice to have a second machine set up for other people. But I can't justify the cost. And anyway, I only have 2 arms, and I can't figure out how to use a second machine at the same time. So
No, I don't use that.
And Bonnie refuses to teach me how to kitchener, and she refuses to learn how to knit socks.
To find rolls.
How many, do you just have one cylinder? Do you knit on just one cylinder?
I have 72, 60, 54 at the present time. And I would like to acquire the 48, but that is down the road yet.
Okay. In a normal non-COVID year, how many pairs of socks do you sell in a year?
That varies. We try to max out at 350 pairs of socks a year. Knit.
And we're only going to market twice a month.
And we only go to a market twice a month, except at Christmas time. We'll add a couple extra shows during Christmas. We also, as I said, do museums, but our restrictions are self-created. We don't go to places other than a farmer's market where we are required to rent. If we're going to demonstrate the machine, which is what we're pushing a lot, we push the demonstration of the machine, and the selling of the socks are an addition because we need to cover our costs in getting to the event.
Do you crank every day?
No, I control my time. We have 200 items for sale on our rack, and we have 200 items in storage for replacement when the items sell. I don't have the need to knit all the time. When COVID hit, it was, I wanted to knit because I had all this time, nothing to do, and it was be a good way to occupy space. Bonnie says, what happens if we don't go back to the farmer's market? So it turned out we left our yarn unknit in storage. When we sell something, which we have sold during COVID, we reproduce the product that we sell to keep our stock at a certain level. But I've only knit a very few socks. As you can see, Bonnie is right at the present kitchening because
I did a pair while we were gone.
a couple of weeks ago we returned to our farmers markets, and I knit 4 pairs of socks during the market, and Bonnie is now kitchening those 4 pairs of socks.
Let's see. How do you? This is a great question. How do you decide what colors / sizes to offer? And I think you just answered, how many do you bring along to your farmer's market? It sounds like you sort of answered that, but how did you figure out what sizes were going to be most likely to sell, or colors? Is that just experience, or?
Okay, it's experience. We
only started with 7 and 8 for women when we started.
Yeah, we just, as Bonnie says, we started with women's 7s, women's 8s, but we recorded what we sold to try to get an understanding to what to produce and the amount to have. And after 8 years, the data didn't give us any direction, but we tried to concentrate on 7, 8, and 9s for women's most.
10s, because it's a crossover.
10s and 11s for men are the most that we'll have in stock. We'll have 9s for men's, 12s and 13s as well, but 13s we might sell 3 or 4 pairs of socks a year. And we had a customer the last market that asked for a 13. We only have 1 because we were phasing 13s out. It was difficult for us to have the space on the rack for 13s when they weren't moving.
Do you, let's see, did you, so you cranked all the pairs on the same machine. Did you have to replace any parts? Have you worn anything out?
No, I've created over 6,000 socks on the same machine. I've used the exact same needles. I've bent a couple latches over the time. So the machine hasn't wore out yet. And I fully expect the machine and the needles and everything I have will be passed on to my children's children so that they can enjoy wool socks.
Cool.
Nice.
Are all your socks the same style? And can you hold up a sock and describe it?
Okay. Yeah. No, we have hung hems. We have like that. Mind
This
you,
is
that
good karma yarn.
Hey.
yes, the good karma yarn is our go-to yarn in the wintertime. After coming back from your crank-in, we always have some yarn, which is fantastic in January and February to keep our feet warm. Now, let's see. Here's the sample. It's got ribbing on the top for 25 rows. Then we got full stockinette for the upper, orange heels and toes. That's
We
just
started doing those
that's just
before
a
COVID.
similar a simple sock that I produce. Bonnie can talk when I'm away. Here's the same type. Oh no, this is a hung hem with contrasting heels and toes. But what I have done is I have turned the inside into matching with the heels and toes, so that if a person decides they want to have a colorful cuff, they can fold it over, or they can just go with the blue or whatever the main body color is.
Here's Tabby.
Also, there's tabby socks. Another use for your surplus leftover yarn.
Can
And
we
if
see a
you,
close-up of your tag?
pardon me?
Yep.
Can we see a close-up of your tag? People were asking about what your tag looks like. A little bit over to the side more.
Let's move it that way. There you go.
Back
Too
it up.
close.
Back it
Too
up. Back it up.
close, Too close. Right there. Perfect.
It tells who we are, our contacts, our washing instructions, what the sock's made of. Our little signature is our socks are hugs for the feet, says the size and the price. On the back, there's a product number and the color.
And what is the price of your socks? Somebody asked.
We were selling them at $35. Just before COVID, we had decided to raise them to $40. They are now $40.
And that's Canadian.
That's
Yeah.
Canadian. So
Yeah.
at $35 Canadian, if you're selling your socks in the US at $35, when you do the conversion, that's 43 and change Canadian. So we figured that there was people that were selling socks in the US at 35. We boosted to 40. Shipping, yarn costs,
Yeah.
it justified it. Mind you, we were at 35 for 5 to 6 years. So we had many knitters that were telling us that we can't sell at that low price any longer. We needed to up our price.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of knitters who
And our accountants.
buy from us as well, because they said, well, I can knit a sweater, but I want to give socks, so I'll buy your socks and take the label off and just give them as gifts. Works for me. But just as I was saying, we were trying to create ideas and ways to use up our leftover yarn. And after, 8-9 years of doing this and 6,000 pairs of socks, this is a box of leftover yarn that has not been used yet. So that's it for after 8 or 9 years. And this will, when we sell some hats, be turned into hats.
That's wonderful. I bet
This
people
is
are
deranged.
And oh yes, our deranged, we just little bits and pieces of yarn. We'll knit a pair of socks. We'll knit them, we'll say size 8 for women. We'll put them in a basket and people can pick out a pair of socks that they want. We
These are leftovers. They're semi-matched.
Those are awesome. Where do you buy your yarn? Besides Good Karma.
Besides Good Karma, we
Distributor.
we
Canadian
buy
distributor.
we buy it from the whole. We use Opal yarn exclusively, and we buy it from Cricket Cove, which is a wholesaler for Opal in Canada.
Do you use Lycra in your socks?
No, we use just Opal yarn. Don't need any adding
We
any
do
more
have
plastic
this
into our yarn.
Canadian yarn.
We have purchased yarn from in Ontario from a Canadian mill, and we knit that. But I like the colorful, flashy, variegated yarn. It's people put gold around their necks, gold on their fingers, silver and whatever on their ears. Now we give people an opportunity to put some jewelry on their feet.
Nice. Do you block all your socks?
Don't block a thing.
Okay. Do you have a
They're washed and dried, and that's it.
okay.
Laid flat.
Do you have a favorite toe style? Somebody said.
No, the toe that I learned from the Erlbacher book that came with the machine is the toe that I use, and I just continue to do it. I'm too old to learn something new.
This is my favorite question so far. You'll know why, Blake. What size cylinder are you using for hats, and are you using half pitch?
Yes, we use a 72 cylinder with a 72 equal slot river dial, and it's all done half pitch. For adult hats, the baby hats are done on a 60 cylinder without the river. They're just a hung hem for the cuff of the baby hats, and there's 3 different sizes for those. The pattern for that is somewhere on the internet. I downloaded it one day, and we started to produce hats. We've had many nurses who have come through the market and have looked at our baby hats and said our hats are perfect sized, so we can have confirmation from people who work in the children's hospital, and people who have bought our baby hats have sent pictures where their children are wearing them and have gone from the small one up to the large one, and they've asked us if we make hats for younger children. I was thinking about doing a hat on the 60 cylinder for younger children, the same as I do for an adult, but it hasn't happened yet. I'm waiting for the price between the Canadian dollar and the American dollar to come a little closer so I can buy a river for this full, let's see, I want to buy a 60 slot river to go with my 60 slot cylinder, but the business needs to justify the cost.
Do you make custom socks for weird feet? And are those customers repeat sales?
The narrow feet.
Weird feet, as in narrow. I have knit socks I do knit socks for custom orders, and I have knit socks for people who want like a narrow foot. Um, Basically, I go from a size woman's 5 to a men's 13. The women's socks are all knit on a 60 cylinder. They're a little narrower. If I knit a special sock for someone who has a narrow foot,
So there's
I'll
the,
put my heel spring on and tighten it up a little bit instead of using Lycra or in addition to the material. I just use what I have and tighten it
that's
up.
the difference.
There's on the woman's sock, it's about 3¼ inches across the foot. So by putting your heel spring on, you can bring it down to 3 or 2¾ inches.
And I have a question. Can you talk about what that market is like that you go to near you in Nova Scotia? Isn't it a really cool market? And how could people find out more about that if they wanted to visit?
Okay, we are at there are numerous farmers markets in Halifax. We go to Halifax Brewery Farmers Market. It's a cooperative market. That means we as vendors own the market. It's a co-op. We buy a membership and have annual meetings and elect a board of directors that runs the market for us. It's very unique in the fact that it's in an old brewery on the harbor front, which has many rooms so you can wander in and about and enjoy the experience, as well as check out the farmers and the products that they sell. We
Have to be approved.
we have been there for 9 years, no, going on 10 years now. And we have been members for the past 5 years. It took us a while because their restrictions to membership are primary producers being farmers, secondary producers being crafters, and they had limits as to the number of people that they would let. So when there came a spot available, we were able to get a membership and participate. So that's about it. There's a market just down the street. It's called the Seaport Market, but it's privately owned.
Okay. I have a couple more questions. Do you get any prejudiced people who don't like machine-made socks over hand-knit socks?
Oh, for sure. I've had a few conversations. It's kind of interesting because Bonnie will be selling the socks with our display set up, and I'll be right beside her with the sock machine knitting socks. And we have had people who tell me that I'm cheating, that the socks aren't as good as hand knit. And I say to them, basically, when they tell me that I'm cheating, I said, well, do you use antibiotics? Do you drive a car? I said, well, aren't you cheating? Because if you're using medical supplies that have come in the past 100 years and are driving an automobile instead of walking, you're cheating just as much as I am, is using technology that was developed 100 years ago to make a pair of wool socks that you can enjoy. So, I mean, some people like to continue to use their store-bought socks, which I call plastic bags, because they're man-made fiber. They pollute our environment, but I get an awful lot of weird looks at people when they have, when I refer to them as plastic bags. I said, well, we up here in Nova Scotia used to refer to Sobe bags as something to put in your rubber boots to keep your feet dry when your boots got holes. So I think they may be thinking about that terminology or that thought process.
So do you have to do any marketing at all for your business, or is it just strictly the farmers market and the mill tours you do, museum stuff?
No, we started
Yeah.
advertising. Bonnie started a blog, and she has a site on Facebook so that we can inform people as to when we are going to be at the market. It took a period of time to educate people who shop that we are only there twice a month. So now we have a lot of people who check our schedule, which is on Bonnie's website and on Facebook, as to when we are available or when we are at the market. However, anyone who wants to buy socks from us, and all they have to do is contact us through Facebook or through our website, or email us, and we'll photograph pictures of socks that we have of the size that they want, send the photographs to them, they get to pick the socks that they want, and we'll ship them to them. It is, or they can come over here to our house and pick them up. Well, with COVID, we've had some interesting sock exchanges. We'll put a plastic bag or a paper bag of socks out on a rocking chair out in the driveway, and someone will drive up, pick them up, and they're happy, we're happy, and
E-transfer.
everything works out well. Another question?
Yep. Have you had customers need any mending to their socks?
That's the customer's responsibility.
I will give them a piece of yarn.
We will give them colored yarn if there's colored yarn that we have available for their repair, but I look at the customer is responsible for the maintenance of his own material or his own socks. They made the hole, they can darn them. Anyway, I've had people who tell me that my socks last too long. I've had customers that say when you can get 4 or 5 years out of a pair of Opal socks, they're lasting too long.
Does anybody have any more questions? I've run out of ones on chat, so speak up if you have a question that I didn't ask.
I do. This is Linda in Richmond, Virginia. I'm interested in, you said you made baby hats on a 60 cylinder. Is that with all the needles in place and with fingering weight yarn? I'm interested in how you managed to do that.
Yes, I make baby hats on a 60 cylinder, all needles in. The first 20 rows are, it's a hung hem. It's a hung hem, the first 20 rows, so you end up with a cuff of 10 rows. And then I just knit all the rest of the hat to a particular length of just plain knitting with all the needles, and then I just draw the top of the hat together after I get to a certain length. We measure with a ruler to determine how many, what the size is, instead of saying I'm going to knit a hat and put 60 rows in it, or I'm going to knit a hat and 80 rows in it. I measure everything. I knit to so many rows, and then I measure with a ruler to determine the exact size, because even though we use the same yarn all the time for everything, being Opal yarn, some of it, depending on the color, is a little heavier than what I had been using prior to it. So there is a variance in the knit length or the length of the knit, even though all my settings are exactly the same for everything.
I was gonna ask if you used a looser tension for the baby hat, but you don't. You use the same tension.
I use the same tension for the baby hat as I do with as I do for socks, but I knit tight. I like my knitting very tight. So I push my limit as far as stitch length right to as tight as I can get it. It's running about 10 stitches an inch is what I'm running at, between 10 and 9. That's where I like to be.
Hello?
I have a question about the hats, if I may ask, the baby hats. I have
Go right ahead.
some fingering yarn that I bought when my daughter-in-law was pregnant. I never used it. So I thought I could knit some hats and donate them like to a shelter or so. Approximately for fingering, how many rows? Because I'm not going to measure. I don't have a head to measure. Approximately how many rows would you get on average, and how many, and tension? Well, I can figure the tension. I think I saw
Okay.
it.
My baby hats. I'll read you the pattern that I use. It came off the internet. The hat should be 1.5 inches shorter than the baby's head what's that? Circumference. Then I knit 20 rows, I hang a hem, and then I knit the number of inches required for the baby's head. What I do is I knit a small, medium, large, extra large, and for example, for a small baby's head, which is 0 to 3 months, it's approximately 5.5 to 6 inches, and I try to knit it about 60 rows. Whereas on a large baby's hat, which is 7.5 inches, I try to knit about 75 to 80 rows. My tension does vary on the size of the hat. For example, my extra large is 9 rotations on an Erlbacher machine. And when I say 9 rotations, is you have your brass dial. When it's up at the very top, that's at 0. And then as I screw it in, 9 turns will be 9 turns of the brass nut.
Tell her that it's about 5 to 7 months old.
And an extra large works for a child who's 5 to 6 months old. I can't hear you.
Okay, I got you here. So we have one last question and then one announcement, and then we're going to take a break. And somebody asked you, do you use heel forks or a V-hook for your weights?
Oh,
I know the answer.
I'm a fan of the V-hook. It gives you much more better control, and I got tired of using the heel forks because my hands were oily. They would slide down and bite me. So I went to the V-hook and mastered that. And I would never go back to a heel fork.
Thank you.
They are vicious.
Yep. Team V-hook.
Okay, so
V-hook all the way.
I was thinking about the sandbag you use for your weights.
Soft weights.
Your soft weights. So you use that too.
Soft weight. This little thing. I knit everything without a buckle. I don't use a buckle. I start with a cast-on bag and the cast-on sack. Just a second. The cast-on sack has a drawstring on the bottom so it opens up like so. It was the deluxe. The pattern is the deluxe cast-on sack in the Erlbacher manuals book that they produced and gave with their machines when you bought them in 2011 and 2012. I don't know if it's in the current book, but it's what I use for knitting a sock or starting the machine, and I just put a bag of lead in, and that's how I start my socks. Use the lead as a downward pull.
How much does your lead soft weight weigh?
I have 4 pounds for one, 3 pounds for none. Let's see, I got 4 pounds, 2 pounds, and a 1 pound. That way I can, if I need to increase any weight, I can add a pound or 2 pounds at a time. But I have found that 4 pounds works well for me, and I don't need to go up or down.
Okay, all right.
It just
I think we've got
works
all
well.
the questions covered. One comment we want to make is that you were talking about half-pitch ribbing, and we thought Steve Ashton was going to do a demonstration on half-pitch ribbing, but he's going to do something on making a sock fit your foot. So we'll keep half-pitch ribbing for the next crank in. Any final questions for Blake and Bonnie? And if not, we're going to take a little quick break, and then we're going to have Rosalind Keys coming on, and she's going to make a fingerless glove on the machines. Anybody got any questions for Blake or Bonnie? Nice shirt, Bonnie.
It's on backwards.
I know.
That's the first thing Jim said. We miss you guys. It seems like
Well,
Oh, it's nice to see you here.
it is. It is nice to see
You
you.
didn't have to drive.
oh, I got a question for you.
Oh, what's that?
Did you seen that last night was Saturday night, and normally when you have a crank in Saturday nights at the lobster pound, did you get your lobster supper last night?
We did that the last crank in, the one in May. We did that.
Okay.
Yeah. No, Sean and Zoe made homemade lasagna from scratch, noodles and everything. So it was delicious.
Oh.
They're cooking for us.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully things will get back to normal for next June.
We
Yes.
really all hope so. I know everybody here hopes so.
And- Thank you for taking the time to tell us about your business. And they're one of our sponsors. You can see them on a link on our Patreon page, and follow them and ask them questions and pick his brain for more knowledge.
Well, thanks for the invitation, and we'll become the audience now.
Okay.
Bye-bye.